John Felt here, and this is the Blue Water Outlook Weekly Weather Briefing for September 15th, 2019. Well, a couple things to look at as far as the tropics. I don't think they're going to have any significant impact on the U.S., but a couple tropical systems out there of interest. Middle part of the nation has been quite active, the upper Midwest. And I also want to talk about how it looks like the above normal temperatures are going to continue across most of the nation right through the rest of the month. So with that, let's get started in today's briefing. Well, you can see that most of the heaviest precipitation did fall over the upper Midwest and pretty much everywhere else, except maybe perhaps the immediate coast. We have an onshore flow here. Everywhere else, not much precipitation, but 2 to 3 inches and locally 4 to 5 have fallen over parts of the upper Mississippi and the Missouri River basins. Now we look at departure from normal temperature. Areas in yellow and red indicate above normal temperatures. Areas in blue, below normal. So what areas have been dry? Well, those are areas in yellow, and that includes most of the western part of the U.S., especially the southwest U.S. Look at this there. We're looking at really below normal precipitation anomalies over parts of the Four Corners region. California and Texas are also quite dry, as well as Montana and the Pacific Northwest. Now the action spot, not just recently, but almost a season-wide trend, has been right through here. This axis right here has been very wet. We have a secondary area that's been dry right in here, and that's affected the Corn Belt. But right over here, remember that precipitation, real heavy rain, that came in an area that's been quite dry. So for the most part, even though I'm sure there were issues with some flooding, it was more localized and urban, and I think from an ag perspective, that was a needed rainfall. So there are some tropical systems out there to keep an eye on. Humberto is one. We have a system in the Gulf, which is another system out there. And then we have a system out here that right now has a pretty low probability in the next 2 days to develop, maybe a better probability after that. A couple observations. One is there's always discussion on whether the European model or the American model is doing better with forecasting tropical systems. Last year, actually, the American GFS had a little bit of an edge over the European. Generally, the European has a little bit of an edge over the American GFS. This year so far, I think with Dorian and now Humberto, the Europeans picked up on some significant and very important trends in their tracks. For Dorian, it kept it more offshore, and now with Humberto, it picked up on this sharp right turn. So let's keep that in mind as we go through the remainder of the hurricane season. So here's the track of Humberto. Maybe some higher wave action along the U.S. East Coast, but overall no significant impacts. And there's the track of the system moving across the Gulf here. South Texas, as I mentioned, has been very dry, so if this would push onshore, this could be a very beneficial rainfall for this area. Although I'm sure with Houston and some areas, there's going to be some urban flood areas that are going to be impacted, as well as low drainage spots and such, small tributaries. But overall, if this pushes inland, that could be a needed rainfall. So as far as rivers go, you can sort of see this area here in the upper Midwest, which has been impacted by the rainfall over the last not just week, although this area is more in the last week, but this other area here in the upper Midwest, this has been more the last month. So very high stream flows in those areas. We also have very low stream flows over the southeast U.S., mid-Atlantic, and Texas. So if this area of tropical moisture does push in, keep in mind that these rivers are very low, starting out very low. So it's dry soils. It can handle inches of rain before we get into widespread areas. Again, that could be a beneficial rain. I wanted to point out that this river flow coming down the Missouri River is attenuating as it comes downstream. Not nearly as much rain in this region. So as we get to Jefferson City to St. Charles, just within bank flows. Likewise, with the tributaries into the mid-Mississippi coming down, it's attenuating. And that might not be a bad thing, because we want to sort of sustain for river transportation. We want to sustain the flows on these main stem rivers during a dry time of year. So in that regard, it's probably good we're getting some extra water being pumped into these rivers. Okay, so here's the jet stream. And usually late September and into October is sort of a lazy weather time. The jet stream's still to the north. We're between winter and spring and summer, where it's more active early summer. So if we don't get tropical weather like we see here with these two tropical systems, oftentimes the weather's way up to the north. Now I did want to mention we have a very strong push here onshore. We have a system pushing on, and that's going to cause some impacts in the northwest U.S., and that energy will be traversing the far northern tier of the U.S., and other than that, it could be a pretty quiet week. So when we look at the jet stream here, we see a lot of waviness actually. We see this area, this ridge here, right here, of high pressure in week 1, and look at week 2. It actually becomes a trough. Week 1, a ridge of high pressure. Week 2, the jet stream digs. And over the western U.S., week 1, we have that system right here pushing in with a digging trough, and week 2, we have a bit of a ridge. So when we see these alternations in the jet stream back and forth, that means we're probably going to have some changes in temperature as well. And you can see that here. Let's start in the western U.S. We start out with, let's get to the beginning of the loop here, right here. Cooler temperatures with the ridge, and then, or the trough, and then we end up with a ridge pushing in and warmer temperatures. Middle U.S., really unusually warm this week, and then we cool down with that trough digging in. So even though not a lot of action as far as rainfall goes in many areas, quite a bit of change in temperature. So as far as the precipitation forecast goes, here is your precipitation with Humberto. It just maybe brushes parts of the east coast of Florida. No significant rainfall impacts. Here's a precipitation with the system moving across the Gulf. Upper Midwest precipitation, some monsoonal flow in the Four Corners area, which is needed. It's very dry. And then that strong system pushing in onshore flow in the Pacific Northwest, enhancing rainfall in that area. The extended forecast, both the 6 to 10 and the 8 to 14. First of all, I want to sort of say on this 8 to 14, I think this is sort of a low confidence. I think this might be a little bit closer to normal with that trough digging, but at least up through the next week to 10 days, it definitely looks like very warm and usually hot temperatures over a large part of the nation. Precipitation, here we go, right through the next 10 days, still in this area in the upper Midwest. Very strong dry signal in the east, and then 8 to 14, very dry. Now, let's take a real quick look at some weather hazards here. I don't see any really widespread severe storm activity, but I did want to mention with the really dry conditions, we have a critical fire risk for the next couple days over the western U.S., and then I mentioned the above normal temperatures as well this week. So overall, even though it looks like a fairly quiet week nationwide, there are going to be some localized impacts here and there. And I think one of the biggest trends is just going to be changing in temperature with unusually hot weather this week over a large part of the middle and eastern U.S. That's this week's briefing. Take care.